Chapter 5. The Black Cat. Salah ad-Din got home very late. It was nearly midnight, and he was very tired. But his work was not yet finished. He took some pieces of paper out of his wallet. They were the pieces of paper from Pearson's room. Salah ad-Din sat down and looked at Pearson's notes. The Pharaoh An-Kutun. This pharaoh did not live long. He died when he was still a boy. Where was An-Kutun buried? An-Kutun was going to the Sudan when he died. The valley of Zar is beside the road to the Sudan. Was An-Kutun buried in the valley of Zar? What was buried with An-Kutun in his tomb? Was there a cat buried with An-Kutun? There are many old stories about a black cat. An-Kutun loved black cats. When he died, a black cat was put in his tomb. But this cat was very unusual. It was made of gold. Its eyes were diamonds. There was a collar of diamonds round its neck. Is this story true or not? Why was the cat covered with black paint? Fear of robbers. Black paint hid the gold and diamonds. A cat painted in thick black paint did not look valuable. Questions that must be answered. Is An-Kutun buried in the valley of Zar? Is there a black cat in his tomb? Is the black cat made of gold? Or is it made of wood? Are the stories true or false? Salah ad-Din read the notes again. He asked himself some questions. Did Pearson find the tomb of An-Kutun? He asked himself. Did he find a black cat? And is the black cat made of gold? There was a reason for Pearson's death. Was the black cat the reason? There are too many questions, thought Salah ad-Din. I must find some answers. The answers are in the missing box, and it's probably on its way to Beirut. I'll be there tomorrow. Chapter 6. In Beirut. At 10:30 the next morning, Salah ad-Din arrived at Beirut Airport. The airport lies to the south of the city, and the docks are in the north. One road from the airport to the docks goes through the center of the city. Another road goes beside the sea. Salah ad-Din got into a taxi. He told the driver to take the road beside the sea. The sun was shining on the city, and there was a mist on the hills behind. The air was fresh and cool. Salah ad-Din felt very happy in Beirut. It was nice and cool after the heat and dust of Cairo. When he got to the docks, he asked about the boat from Alexandria. The Sudan did not arrive at Beirut until 6:30 in the evening. Salah ad-Din had more than 6 hours to wait. He decided to visit a friend called Fuad. Fuad had been a student with Salah ad-Din at Cairo University. He now worked in the Lebanese Department of Antiquities in Beirut. His office was in a large museum in the northeast part of the city. Salah ad-Din took a taxi to the museum. Fuad was surprised and pleased to see him. "We'll have lunch together," said Fuad. "I'll phone my wife immediately." 10 minutes later, they were in Fuad's car. Fuad lived in a small village in the mountains above Beirut. The road was very steep. It twisted and turned up the mountain. "This road is dangerous," said Salah ad-Din. "You're right," replied Fuad, "and it's more dangerous higher up. People are often killed up there." But it was also very beautiful. It was spring, and the trees and the flowers were fresh and green. Some people were already selling fruit beside the road. They had large baskets of strawberries. The car soon arrived at Fuad's house. Fuad's wife, Layla, was waiting for them. "Hello, Salah-ad-Din," said Layla. "It's nice to see you again. We've a lot to talk about, but first we'll have lunch." After lunch, they sat out on the veranda and drank coffee. They talked about Cairo and their friends there. From the veranda, they looked down towards the tall buildings of Beirut. Behind the buildings were the docks and the sea. "Now," said Fuad, "why are you in Beirut?" Salah-ad-Din told Fuad about the death of Pearson. He told him also about the man with fair hair. "I want to be at the docks at 6 o'clock, said Salah-ad-Din. "I'm going to meet the Sudan. It arrives at 6:30. "I'll take you there in my car," said Fuad. They sat on the veranda and talked together. The time passed quickly, and soon they had to leave for the docks. "Bring Salah-ad-Din back here," Layla said to Fuad. "Our house is more comfortable than a hotel. He must stay here tonight." Salah-ad-Din thanked Layla and stood up. "It's getting cold," he said. "Yes," replied Fuad. "You're wearing summer clothes. This is not Cairo. It's cold here in the mountains. It's cold sometimes even in summer. I'll get you a warm coat. You'll need it later." At 5 o'clock, Salah-ad-Din and Fuad left the house. They said goodbye to Layla and drove down the steep road towards Beirut. Chapter 7. The Road to Baalbek. At 6 o'clock, Salah-ad-Din and Fuad arrived at the docks in Beirut. They sat in the car and waited for the arrival of the Sudan. There was another car on the docks. "Do you see that black car over there?" asked Fuad. "The one with 2 men in the front?" "Yes," said Fuad, "and there's a fat man sitting in the back seat. I know him. He's interested in antiquities. He often comes to the museum." The Sudan soon appeared at the entrance to the docks. It reached the dockside just after 6:30, and the passengers came down the gangway. "There he is," said Salah-ad-Din, "the man on the gangway. He's tall, he has fair hair and broad shoulders. That's the man." "But I know him," said Fuad. "He's a Swede, and his name is Borkman. He's interested in antiquities too. I've often seen him in the museum." "Where's the box?" asked Salah-ad-Din. "He's not carrying a box." "Let's wait and see," said Fuad. "Perhaps he's given the box to a porter." "Look," said Salah-ad-Din, "the black car is moving." The black car moved a few meters and stopped again behind a shed. Fuad and Salah-ad-Din sat and waited. Borkman got off the boat and got into a taxi. But he was not carrying a heavy box. The taxi started to move away. "Let's follow him," said Fuad. "Wait a moment," said Salah-ad-Din. "Watch the black car." Salah-ad-Din was right. The black car pulled out slowly and followed Borkman's taxi. "We can go now," said Salah-ad-Din. "We'll follow the black car. There's something strange here." The 3 cars drove out of the docks, one after the other. The taxi went quickly through the streets of Beirut. Then it started to climb the steep road towards the mountains. The black car followed the taxi. Fuad followed the black car. "Isn't this the road to your village?" asked Salah-ad-Din. "Yes," replied Fuad. "This road goes higher up the mountains. It goes to a small town called Baalbek." "I've heard of Baalbek," said Salah-ad-Din. "There are some famous ruins there." "And there's a gang of smugglers too," said Fuad. "They smuggle antiquities out of Beirut." The 3 cars drove up the steep road. They went past Fuad's village. Fuad drove on in silence. The road became narrower and steeper, and Fuad did not drive too close to the black car. "The road's more dangerous here," said Fuad. "There was an accident a few weeks ago. 4 people were killed." For a few moments, nothing happened. Then the black car began to go faster. It had moved into the middle of the road and was trying to pass Borkman's taxi. The 2 cars were now side by side. They were almost touching each other. There was a sharp bend in the road in front of them. "They'll never get round that bend," shouted Fuad. But it was already too late. There was a loud crashing noise. Fuad slowed down and drove carefully around the bend. The black car and the taxi had disappeared. In front of them, the road was empty. Everything was silent. Chapter 8. Borkman's Story. Fuad and Salahuddin got out of the car and walked to the edge of the road. It was now getting dark and cold. The 2 cars lay below them. The black car had fallen about 200 meters to the bottom. It was on fire. The taxi had not fallen so far. It was lying against a tree. "Come on," said Salahuddin. "Let's climb down quickly. Perhaps Borkman's still alive." Fuad climbed down the steep path, and Salahuddin followed him. They found the taxi. The driver was inside, but he was dead. One of the doors was open, and Borkman had fallen out onto some bushes. He was not dead, but he was badly injured. Fuad bent down and lifted the dying man. He laid him on a flat piece of ground. After a few moments, Borkman opened his eyes and looked up. He tried to speak, but he did not speak very clearly.
"The men in the black car," he said. "Where are they? What happened to them?"
"They're dead," replied Salahuddin quietly.
"But who are you?"
asked Borkman. "We were passing on the road," replied Fuad. "We saw the accident." There was silence for a few moments. Borkman closed his eyes and lay still on the ground. Then he slowly opened his eyes again.
"Will you help me?"
he asked. "Yes," replied Fuad. "What do you want?"
"Go to Baalbek,"
said Borkman.
"Go to Yusuf's cafe. Ask for Yusuf. Tell Yusuf."
Borkman was silent again. "What do I tell Yusuf?" asked Fuad.
"Tell him that Pearson's dead," said Borkman, "and the black cat's safe."
"Where is the black cat?" asked Salahuddin.
"Tell Yusuf that the black cat's safe,"
said Borkman again. "But where is it?" asked Salahuddin again.
"Peterson has the black cat,"
said Borkman after a few moments.
"I gave it to him at Alexandria. He took it with him on the boat."
"Which boat?" asked Salahuddin.
"The boat to Athens,"
replied Borkman.
"Peterson took the black cat on the boat to Athens."
"Who was following you then?" asked Fuad.
"The Red Hand gang,"
replied Borkman.
"They wanted the black cat. But the black cat is safe. Tell Yusuf. Tell Yusuf."
Borkman closed his eyes for the last time. Blood was running out of his mouth, and his body shook strongly for a moment. Then he lay still. He was dead. "Let's get away quickly," said Salah ad-Din. "I don't want to wait for the police. They'll take us with them to Baalbek. I must leave Beirut immediately. I'm going to Athens. You can tell the police about this in the morning." Fuad and Salah ad-Din climbed back up to the road. Some cars had stopped, and people were looking down at the burning car. Fuad and Salah ad-Din drove off quickly.